Hey friends, welcome back to my sewing room. My name is Becca, and in today's video, we're going to work on block number 11 for the Bright Side Quilt Along. This was a block of the month program that was free in Sew Sampler boxes starting in April 2021 and ending in March 2022. I am on block number 11 of a 12 block sew along, so I am super close to having this done. After this video, there's just two more videos, one to put together block 12 and then the video to put all of the blocks together in their finishing layout. And I'm super excited to have them all done. I can't wait because once this quilt top is finished, that means I can allow myself to start working on the new block of the month program that started shipping out in April 2022. Let's get started. Block number 11 is going to look like this when it's all said and done, and that's actually going to be pretty easy. We're essentially going to make two 9-patch units and two half square triangle units to put together into a 4-patch configuration. So this should be a quick and easy sew. As a reminder, this is not my pattern, so I can't give you the cutting instructions. I have starched, cut, and labeled all of my fabric according to what this pattern card tells me, and so that's where we're going to pick up today's video. So in step number 1, we're going to take our fabric B squares and our fabric C squares, and we're going to lay them out so that the plus formation is featuring fabric C and fabric B is kind of like that 5-point. It'll look something like this. We're going to make 2 of these 9 patches. So to sew this, what we're going to do is make 4 rows where I have a yellow fabric in the middle and 2 rows where I have yellow fabrics on the outside, and then we'll sew them all together to make 2 blocks that look like this. The pressing instructions say that we're always going to press towards yellow. So the top and the bottom rows are going to be pressed towards the middle square, and that middle row, the seams are going to be pressed towards the outside squares. That's going to allow all of our rows to nest quite nicely when we put everything together and help preserve our points. So to get started, I'm going to put my first 2 blocks from all 3 rows right sides together. And then I'm going to my machine and I'm going to chain stitch all 3 of these pieces together. Then I'm going to grab the 3 fabrics from the last column in the order that I have them. I'm going back to my machine and I'm going to pull each of those fabrics and attach them onto the end of each row. Again, I am chain stitching this, which is just going to help keep my 9-patch organized and keep all of the squares in the right order so I don't get confused later. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the second block. Take the first 2 pieces from all 3 rows, put them right sides together, and then I'm going to pick up in position 1, then position 2, and then position 3. Take them to the sewing machine, line up my raw edges, scratch them together if they're not lining up nicely, and chain stitch all 3 of those. Then I'll pick up these last 3 pieces and append them on to the 3 rows that I started to build. Now what you have are 2 packs of squares that look something like this. They're in the right order, but your block isn't quite finished. That's because we've sewn the 3 rows, but we haven't sewn the 3 rows together. We're going to flip these over and put them upside down so I can finger press the seams in the direction that they're supposed to go. Remember, I'm always pressing towards that yellow square. So the top and bottom row, I'm pressing towards the middle, and that middle row, I'm pressing out away from the middle. I don't need to worry about getting my hot iron or anything like that just now. All I'm doing is finger pressing these so that I can take this back to the sewing machine one more time, nest those seams, and sew the rows together. The advantage to chain piecing like this is that you have your block organized and you don't accidentally put a piece in the wrong position. So anytime you're chain piecing a 9 patch or a 25 patch or a 50 patch or whatever it is you're building, and placement of those squares is particularly useful, I find this method of chain piecing is super handy. Now that all my seams are finger pressed, I should be able to butt those seams up next to each other really nicely and then sew each row together. I'm going to line up one seam with my fingers, hold it, and then when my needle is in that seam, then I will stop, line up the next seam, get those seams to nest nicely together, and then finish sewing. So I'm nesting the first seam together, sewing until my needle is in that seam, and then I'm stopping, using my fingers to feel the next set of seams, making sure that they're nested nicely, or as nice as I can get it, and then sewing all the way up. I'm going to repeat that with the second block. First, I nest the first seam with my fingers. Once the needle is in that seam, I nest the second seam with my fingers, just nest it by touch, and then I sew all the way off. And again, we're going to do that one more time with this final row. Now my 9 patches are assembled. I'm going to finger press the top and bottom row out away from the center row. I can do that from the front or from the back. Either way is fine, as long as I'm getting it to lay flat enough that the block is lying open. And this is where I'm going to come in with my iron and really convince everything to lay nice and super flat. Gotta wait for my iron to heat up. I'm just using a hot, dry iron, no steam or starch at this point, though I could if I wanted to. I just like to give my block a good steam or starch press at the very end. Usually save that until the last step. If you want to be extra careful, the pattern does have a measurement for what this 9 patch should size up to. So you could get a ruler and a rotary cutter and make sure that these are exactly the size they're supposed to be. I'm going to throw caution to the wind and we're going to assume that they're just fine. Let's move on to step number 2. In step number 2, we're going to take our fabric D and our fabric A squares, and we're going to use them to make 2 half square triangle units. That means we're going to take the wrong side of our fabric A square, and we're going to draw a line on the diagonal from corner to corner, and we're going to pair that up with our fabric D square. And then we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch on either side of that line that we just drew and cut this apart. And then those half square triangle units should square up to the same size as our 9 patches. And then we'll put this block all together. Once I've cut this apart, I'm going to open it up and press the fabric towards fabric D just with my hand first, just to get to lay nice and flat and open. And then I'll flip over my mat, press these with a hot iron just to get that seam to lay really super flat. And now I'm going to take a moment to square these up so that they fit perfectly in my block. And the reason why I'm squaring these up is because usually the instructions Fat Quarter Shop gives us for any half square triangle unit does have us make them a little bit bigger than they need to be and then size them down. As a reminder, whenever I'm squaring up half square triangle units, I like to put my 45-degree line that's on my square ruler right on top of the seam where the two fabrics meet. And then I make sure that I have some fabric extending past the line that I'm squaring to on the side and the bottom, as well as out the right side and across the top. I clean off the right side, clean off the top, then flip it around, and now those fresh cut edges that I just trimmed should be right on that line for the size that I'm trying to square to. Clean off the side, clean off the top, and now I'm good to go. In step number 3, we're going to lay out our block, so our 9 patches will be in alternating corners, as will our half square triangle units. Our color D should be touching the 9 patch that we're sewing it next to, and the white for our background should be on the outer square, and the point should be coming into the middle, kind of like a pinwheel block. So we're going to sew this row and then this row, and we're always going to press towards the half square triangle unit, and then we'll sew the rows together, and then this block should be done. Let's go to the machine. I'm going to press these with my finger over towards the half square triangle units. And now I'll pair up my 2 rows, making sure that my seam where these 2 rows come together is nice and nested. And if I wanted to take a moment to really pin this, to keep that point from each of the half square triangle units right dead in the middle there, I could. This is what my block looks like when it's all assembled, so the only thing I have left to do is give it a nice press. I like to do that from the back side of the block first, just so that everything lays a little bit flatter on top when it's all done. And then I flip it over, press it from the top, give it some best press, and one more visit with the hot iron. So this is block number 11 for our Bright Side Quilt Along. We are almost done. We only have one more block to do before we put this whole thing together. If you enjoyed this video, I have got 10 other videos just like this where you can watch the progression of this quilt come together one block at a time. I'll link the playlist up at the top of the video, as well as down in the description box and the first comment down below this video. I'd love it if you checked those videos out. If you liked what you saw, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and come on back for block number 12. I'll see you guys all in a week. Bye!